Marty Fisher was the one who told me about the painting. He said it showed up in his house one day, as if it appeared out of nowhere. He came home from school and found it hanging on the wall in the entryway. As he was taking off his shoes, he looked up and it was just there. He didn't say anything about it, since there wasn't anyone around to say anything to. But he did think to himself, what a creepy painting. It was a painting of a clown dressed in white with blue tufts of hair sticking out from the sides of his head. He was grinning broadly and was flanked on either side by smaller, childlike clowns. The grin on the face of the clown was the creepiest part about the whole thing. His head was turned slightly to the side, but his eyes were turned to look at the viewer. It gave the impression of someone who is secretly predatory, a murderer masquerading as a kind face. Marty told me all of this the next day at school, but not in exactly those words. I've had a long time to think about this, and I've run it over in my head a million times, trying to think of what else I could have done to change the outcome of events. It gives me little solace to know there was basically nothing I could have done, as if it were all written in stone, part of my destiny to suffer. When Marty told me about the painting at school, he acted scared, and I couldn't understand how a simple picture could make him feel that way. I was curious, and looking back, that was my one and only moment to step away and never look back. But a friend doesn't do that to a friend, and Marty and I were just that, ride or die, brothers to the end, best friends. He said his mother came home from work and just about lost it when she saw the painting. The woman loved clowns, apparently, and was so enchanted by the image that she broke into tears of joy looking at it. Then she called Marty's dad, who was in the other room, so that she could thank him for buying it. But Marty's dad had no idea where the thing came from, or at least so he said. "I've been in my office writing all day," he said, taking a step back to look at the painting on the wall. "Where the hell did that ugly thing come from?" Immediately after saying this, Marty's dad winced in pain, then began to clutch his chest, grabbing at his shirt and clawing at the fabric. Then he began to let out low, animal noises of pain. Before long, he was on his knees, as if it was much too work to stay standing up. He began to pound the floor with his free hand, slamming it down hard against the linoleum tiles like a referee counting to 10 in a boxing match. "Dad, what's wrong?" Marty asked, looking up at the painting with a sideways glance. "Are you okay?" But Marty's dad didn't answer. He just got worse. For 10 minutes while they waited for an ambulance, he cried out in pain and clawed at his chest, as if there were a rat set loose on his insides, trying to get out. By the time the paramedics arrived, he was nearly catatonic. "What happened to him?" the EMS worker asked Marty with a dry voice, since apparently his mom was too busy to answer. She was fawning over the painting and straightening it, after one of the paramedics had bumped into it. "He was having a heart attack, I think," Marty said. He was a kid, 16 years old, same as me, but he still knew better than to say what he was thinking, and what he wanted to say was, "It's that fucking painting! The one hanging on the wall that appeared out of nowhere. It's cursed and it's ugly. Please get it out of here and let me never see it again." "Does your husband take any medications or non-prescription drugs, miss? Does he drink?" The paramedics were asking 100 questions, but Marty's mom was barely paying attention. Marty told them about how he'd been clutching his chest and all of his strange behavior, and they attached electrodes to his chest and checked his heart rhythm on a portable machine. The one who seemed to be in charge whispered something to the other one. Then moments later, they wheeled him out on a stretcher, putting him in the back of an ambulance. Marty looked at the painting on the wall for a second longer, before rushing outside and getting a ride with them to the hospital. They asked if his mother was coming, and he said he didn't know. As it turned out, they eventually convinced her to ride along to the hospital, after one of the paramedics practically forced her outside with threats of calling social services. She acted a bit more like herself when she was away from the painting. "I think it's cursed," Marty said to me, as we stood outside in the shade of a big tree, eating slices of pizza we'd purchased at the place across the street from the school. It was lunch hour, and we had about 10 minutes left before we had to be back inside. "The painting?" I asked. "Yeah, of course the painting. What the hell else would I be talking about? I thought about this for a few seconds. Nah, shit like that only happens in movies and stuff. There's no such thing as a cursed painting. This isn't a Goosebumps book. I picked a crispy piece of pepperoni off the top of my slice and ate it, enjoying the salty crunch of it between my teeth. Meanwhile, Marty looked at his slice as if he wasn't hungry, and I noticed he'd barely eaten any of it. I couldn't blame the guy, with everything that had been going on. His dad was still in the hospital, and his mom was acting like she couldn't care less. The least I could do was humor him, I thought. I mean, what do I know? Maybe it is cursed. But more likely than not, there's some rational explanation for all this. Hey, listen, I'm sure your dad's gonna be all right, man. Give him a couple days. He probably just had a panic attack or something. Yeah, maybe. Maybe you're right. But I still feel like I need to get rid of that painting. Throw it in a dumpster and just say it got stolen before my dad and my mom get home from the hospital. Can you come over after school and help me? I don't think I could even touch that thing by myself without someone else around. Seriously? You just said it's a cursed painting, and you want me to come over and help you trash it? I thought there was no such things as cursed paintings, he mocked, imitating my voice. Fine, you dick, but you're buying lunch tomorrow. Deal. Thanks, man. I really appreciate it. I don't know what I'd do without you. Most kids would be embarrassed to say something like that. But Marty wasn't most kids. He was never afraid or ashamed to say how he felt. Looking back, I didn't realize what a rare thing that was. We fist bumped, and he went back to eating his pizza with a little more gusto. I found that I wasn't particularly hungry. I threw the rest of my slice in the trash, and the two of us went for the doors as the 5-minute bell rang. Of course, I would later wish that I had trusted my instincts to stay away from that painting. Unfortunately, I went with Marty to help him throw it away after school, and my life would change forever as a result of that decision. And certainly not for the better. When we arrived at Marty's house after school, we found that his mother was still gone. We wouldn't have to fight her for the painting, which was a good thing, since she clearly had some irrational attachment to it. That's it, he said, gesturing to his right as we entered the foyer. As if he needed to say anything. The moment I walked in, I immediately thought to myself that it was exactly what a cursed painting should look like. There was no denying its aura and the creepy vibe that came from just looking at the thing. It felt like the clown was alive and was looking right at me out of the corner of his eye, sneaking a glance at me as his devil children stared straight ahead, taking both of us in. Okay, let's take it down, I said, my voice coming out as a whisper. Marty took a moment to gather his courage. Then he pointed to the right side of it. Okay, you get that side. I reached up and grabbed the gilded edge of the frame. The second I touched it, I was overcome with revulsion, as if someone had just thrust a slimy snake into my hands and told me to hold on to it for a while. Looking at Marty, I saw his eyes were wide and scared. Did you feel that? I asked, and he nodded his head. Neither one of us stopped what we were doing, though. This just confirmed our suspicions. The painting was evil. The unpleasant physical sensation when you touched it was undeniable. After gingerly removing the painting from the wall with Marty's help, we went straight for the door, and I looked up to see my friend's face was as white as a ghost and dripping with sweat. He was terrified, and so was I. Hang on, he said suddenly. Set it down. I obliged, and we lowered it onto the carpet. Then he ran into the kitchen and began rummaging through the cupboards. What the hell are you doing? I asked, glancing down at the clowns out of the corner of my eye, and wishing I hadn't. It felt like their eyes were moving, watching me. Hurry up, man. Why'd you leave me alone with this thing? I wanted to say. Finally, he came back, waving a black garbage bag, which he wrapped around the painting. There, now we don't have to look at it, he said triumphantly. I had to admit, it was a great improvement. We walked down the street carrying the painting, and I asked him where we were taking it. There's a dumpster at the corner store. We can throw it in there. That way my mom will never find it. The corner store was 2 blocks away, but considering our options, that wasn't a bad idea. I shrugged and continued marching along, carrying one end of the painting while Marty led the way with the other. We got a few odd looks on the way to the corner store, but nobody stopped to ask what we were doing, and nobody accused us of robbery, as I pictured happening in my mind's eye. Instead, we arrived at the convenience store several minutes later. As I opened the dumpster lid, several kids from school care came around the corner. They were seniors, and the type of guys who like to get into fights just for fun. I tried to avert my eyes, but it didn't seem to matter what I did.
"What are you two turds doing?"
one of them asked. He was carrying a can of spray paint and wearing a leather vest.
"Let me see that,"
another one with a blue mohawk said, grabbing the painting from my hands.
"What's this? You do a little naked painting of your friend here?"
They ripped the garbage bag off of the clown painting as Marty tried to object. All of them burst out laughing and pointed at it, as if it were the funniest thing in the world.
"Guys, listen, that thing is dangerous. You really shouldn't."
But it was too late. One of them said something about the painting, and the other two quickly started laughing and making their own jokes.
"Looks like Pennywise is getting late after all, boys. Twins! What a freak show! Did you turds paint this ugly pile of shit?"
Within seconds, the changes started happening. Whatever this painting was, I realized, it did not like when you talked badly about it. If you did that, it would hurt you, and maybe much worse. The kid with the blue mohawk seemed to get it the worst. He grabbed his shirt near his heart so forcefully that he ripped the fabric, then tore it completely in half. A moment later, he was rolling onto his back and then onto his front again, grabbing his chest with one hand while he batted the ground with the other, punching the pavement until his fists were bloody. Dirt and pebbles from the road were glued to his face as he cried and thrashed around, before eventually rolling into a nearby ditch. It was full of rainwater from the night prior, and I saw him plunge his face right into it and keep it there as bubbles rose to the surface from below. Leather Vest Kid got it almost as bad. He started pounding against his chest as if trying to restart his head. He then opened and closed his eyes a few times before falling backwards, his head cracking against the asphalt of the parking lot. Blood poured out all over the road, staining it maroon red. The third guy was mostly conscious through all of it. He was on the ground hugging himself and murmuring. The words of whatever he was saying were indiscernible as tears streamed down his cheeks and he made an occasional howl of pain that sounded like a wolf being attacked.
"Help me throw this fucking thing in the dumpster, quick!"
Marty yelled, and I did as he asked, helping him to toss it in the bin. I looked around nervously to see if anyone was coming out to check on the noise, but so far I couldn't see anybody. We dialed 911 from a nearby payphone, hoping to keep it anonymous. That was immediately out of the question, though. The operator said she recognized Marty's voice, and was it any surprise? Not many people call for an ambulance 2 days in a row. After being questioned by the police, the two of us were released and brought home. Neither one of us mentioned the painting, and fortunately for us, the other three guys didn't say a word about it either. They weren't capable of saying much of anything after that, though, especially the one who ended up in the ditch, since he somehow drowned himself in there. I would think about that a lot, blaming myself for not pulling him out of that water. Maybe I could have saved his life, but somehow I doubt it. The painting is an unstoppable force, and we were just kids. The following day, I woke up to a phone call from Marty. I answered it, looking with bleary eyes at my alarm clock.
"Dude, it's 6 a.m. Why are you calling so early?"
"It's back,"
he said, and my blood froze in my veins.
"What? No. How? Did you tell your mom what happened to it?"
"No, and she freaked out when she saw it was gone. I thought she was gonna kill me, but after that mess at the convenience store, she must have felt bad."
"Do you think she went and looked for it? Pulled it out of the dumpster?"
He was silent for a few moments, and I thought maybe he'd hung up.
"You still there?"
"Yeah, and no, I don't think she could have found it so quickly. It doesn't make sense, dude. This is like a fucking horror movie."
I thought back to my comment about the painting from where we'd spoken at school, less than 24 hours prior, but what felt like a lifetime ago. Shit like that only happens in movies. There's no such thing as a cursed painting. If only I'd been right about that.
"What do you want to do?"
I asked, hesitantly, already knowing his answer.
"We gotta get it out of here before she wakes up. Can you come over now? I have an idea."
He told me his plan. As much as I wanted to say no, it seemed like the best chance we had at getting the thing out of our lives. You couldn't throw the painting away. And if this really was like a horror movie, you wouldn't be able to burn it or throw it off a bridge or anything like that either. We'd both read enough R.L. Stine to know that. The only way to get rid of a cursed object like that, according to our pop culture knowledge of such things, was to get someone else to take it willingly. We needed someone like Marty's mom, someone who loved clowns and wanted to keep the painting for themselves. That would be the only way to get it out of our lives. And Marty had figured out a way to do just that.
You sure this is gonna work?
I asked him as we lowered the painting down from the wall again.
What if someone notices it?
At least this time, he had provided some spare gardening gloves which he'd unearthed in the garage, so we wouldn't have to get that queasy feeling from touching the thing again.
We'll sneak it in, so nobody sees it. This thing is huge.
What are you talking about?
How is nobody gonna see it?
He covered it with a garbage bag again, shushing me and telling me to lower my voice.
Don't wake up my mom. She'll freak if she sees us doing this. Fine, let's just go.
The two of us hurried out the front door with the painting and started walking down the street with it. I could have sworn I felt the thing moving around beneath the garbage bag, as if it were alive, a bag full of vipers, ready to attack.
I swear, ever since this stupid fucking painting showed up, my life has been...
Marty stopped mid-sentence, and his arm went limp. The painting's weight fell entirely onto my end, causing me to stumble off balance and fall. My foot nearly went through the canvas as the frame landed against my toe. When I looked up, I saw Marty was on the ground, lying on the asphalt and convulsing, as if he were having a seizure.
No!
I yelled, throwing the painting off of me and running over to help him.
Marty! Marty!
I screamed his name again and again, not understanding what was happening or what I could do to assist him. In the end, I settled for the only thing I could do. I took the painting and ran from there, hoping maybe that if I ran hard and fast enough, the power of that cursed object would lose its strength. I ran until my legs burned and my lungs were screaming for oxygen. Setting the painting down against a table leg, I realized I had inadvertently reached my goal. The place where we were going to take the stupid cursed fucking thing. I looked up and saw the people who owned the house weren't paying attention. They were engaged in a sale at the table where they had set up their money box. There was a good chance I might actually get away with this. Pulling off the garbage bag from the painting, I set it down again so that it rested against the table leg once more. It looked as if it were displayed for sale, only missing a price tag. Then I turned around and walked away, hoping, just maybe, that nobody would see me and ask me any questions. I took several long strides away from the house. Then, just before I was out of earshot, I heard someone remark,
"What an ugly fucking painting that is,"
before several screams erupted and a commotion began. Each step I took brought me further away from the noise and the screaming, until finally I could no longer hear those voices. I just hoped that someone would take that painting and I would never see it again. As it turned out, I wouldn't. But that didn't mean I got off without consequences. Marty was okay at first, and he told me I did the right thing. I thought for a while that maybe I saved him, but then he died shortly thereafter from a heart attack at 23 years old. A myocardial infarction, the doctor said. Way too young for most people to suffer from that sort of thing. His dad was never the same, nor were the two surviving kids who insulted the painting by the dumpster. I don't know as much about them, but from what I've gathered in my research, they wound up in medical facilities and then went off the grid. Maybe they're dead too, for all I know. Not everyone gets an obituary after all. Marty's dad worked as a writer, as I mentioned, but after he saw that painting and it struck him down, he never wrote again. The man couldn't do anything creative for the remainder of his days and passed away several years after his son. Marty's mother lived a long and happy life and is still around to this day. You might ask why I still care. Why do I still bother to follow these people's lives, and why do I research what happened to that painting? I followed its travels up until its mysterious disappearance to a lab somewhere, probably secured by a government agency once they figured out its true nature. Well, the problem for me is that I spent a lot of time around that painting, and I had a lot of negative thoughts toward it. I never said anything out loud, but maybe you don't have to. Maybe it knows what you're thinking, and it can come after you anyway. It didn't happen right away. Like with Marty, it took time. The doctors have given me a few different options, but none of them sound great. They say it's a rare heart condition, that I've only got a little bit of time left if I don't decide on an option soon. And even then, I probably don't have much life left to live. Somehow, I don't think it matters what I do. After all this time, that painting is finally coming for me. All these years later, I know that fucking clown is going to get the last laugh. Thanks for listening. If you enjoy these stories, be sure to subscribe to the podcast and check out some more of my episodes here.